Get start? Okay, hello everybody. This is Sam from Klaytn. Today I'm going to try to answer some questions regarding Web3 games and P2E games. So, for example, why Web2 game companies are interested in joining this industry, and how should we prepare for Web2 games and Web2 game companies to integrate blockchain into their games, and what kind of examples are existing there. So this is outline of my talk today. So I'll just talk about what key components are inside P2E games and some problems that we are encountering with current P2E games. And then I will talk about architectures for Web2, traditional Web2 games, and how blockchain game architectures look like. And then from our experience with Web2 game companies, I will share some requirements for blockchain ecosystem from the perspective of Web2 game companies. And then, of course, I'll share the design and implementation of blockchain ecosystem for Web2 games, and we'll lastly share some examples of blockchain game platforms and Web2 IP-based P2E games. Okay, I think that everyone knows here about P2E games, but it's Howling? It's okay? Okay. So the P2E games can be defined like games that include systems that allow users and players to earn cryptos or NFTs through gameplay. So we know that, and we are playing Axie Infinities or Gas on Chain and so on. So, people are playing games for earning. Yeah. But what kind of components are important for these P2E games? Let me summarize with 3 points. The first point is users' ownership on game assets. The game users in P2E games, they own digital assets, the game assets in the game, and there should be no risk of system manipulation or damage or disappearance of these users' game assets. And second important point is the open economy in the P2E games. So in-game currencies, items, and resources can be freely and transparently traded without intermediately through blockchain technology and blockchain infrastructure. And the last, but not the least, the open governance is the key point, because through this open governance, any member of the game company can freely participate in key decisions such as game development and direction. But not all of the P2E games have this component, but they are trying to have this component inside their implementation. So, but we know the P2E games are attracting people in the beginning of their games, but they are losing users once they reach some point of the inflation or, okay, no problem. So let me point out some problems that we are seeing from current P2E games. So the first one is there is a high barrier to entry for the games, because to play P2E games, we have to install wallets, and we have to understand how blockchain works, how private keys are working, and how we have to keep the private keys in a safe place, and so on. So there's a still high barrier. And the second point is the game distribution channels, because most game distribution channels are dominated by Web2 companies like Apple App Store and Google Play Store. But if we want to distribute our, the P2E games through these channels, it's very difficult, right? So there are many regulation issues and so on. So we are not easily able to list or distribute our games through the traditional channels. And the third point is game bots. The game bots are, everywhere to earn money or to earn tokens or cryptos. But this destroys the balance of game, and the people live because of this. We play game for fun and to earn some creatures, but if this kind of economy is destroyed by bots, then I mean, who's gonna play the game, right? And the person is the regulatory risk. Yeah, everyone knows about this. So, but the major problem and the most significant problem is many P2E games are not fun to play. Yeah, that's the significant problem and critical one. And that's because the most, but not the most, the many Web3 game developers are actually and currently focusing on part rather than play part. So that's the biggest issue. So that's where the Web2 or AAA game companies come to. Because to tackle that kind of issues that I mentioned before, the Web2 game companies, they have their IPs and their existing games that have many user base. So they are thinking about how if they try to use P2E and try to use their own IP and they combine these two, then what's going to happen? And that's why they come to this market and they are building a blockchain game platform, and also they are transforming their Web2 games to Web3 version or a P2E game version. And these are some examples of large game companies, mostly in South Korea and Japan, and they are trying to build their game platform using blockchain or Web3 infrastructure. So then let's jump into how they are going to build the game architecture or game platform. So this is very simplified Web2 game architecture. So this is just traditional deep database-based server client architecture. So we have game client and centralized game server and database. And the game client and servers are interacting each other, right? But if we look at how we integrate blockchain into this traditional architecture, then there might be more, but there are two ways we can simply think about. So the first one is mixed approach. So we have game client, and also we still have game server and database, but we can interact with the blockchain for in-game access or to store important game data or user data on blockchain. So this is kind of mixed approach and hybrid approach. And we go further, we can remove the decentralized part from the architecture. The game server and the database are gone, and the game client, where the user play, that actually and then really interact with only with blockchain. And this is just traditional DApp architecture. And the game, and many games and many P2E games are moving forward to this architecture direction. So with this architecture, is it sufficient for Web2 game companies? No, actually not, because they started from Web2 games, and the Web2 games are really high performing, and they need more performance and more stable and secure environment for their games. So I summarized the requirements from the Web2 game companies especially for blockchain ecosystem, because we are interacting with them, and they told me like this. So because, I mean, their ecosystem is already big, and they have many games internally and in their subsidiaries. So instead of, I mean, deploying their games to the existing blockchain, many of them really want to build their own blockchain game platform instead of just using public blockchain or public blockchain. So which means they need an entire blockchain ecosystem as long as they can build. So this is the case for many AAA game companies. And of course, I mean, their existing games are really high performing, and they require really high performance blockchain. So high performance and stable blockchain is really primary one, but also they need low transaction fee structure. And third one is, I mean, about time to market. You know, the competition between game companies are really high, and they need to develop their blockchain platform, blockchain game platform or blockchain games faster than others, of course. And the last one is about users and ecosystem project. Of course, I mean, more and better. So what does it mean for us and mean for blockchain protocol and the blockchain industry? So the first requirement about building entire ecosystem means they need a full suite of ecosystem components as well as a blockchain protocol or blockchain implementation. So we need a full set of components instead of only giving them a blockchain. And the second part is they really need high performance and the chief blockchain implementation so they can deploy many transactions and they can they can interact with a blockchain. And the third one is, to reduce the development time, we have to provide them with ready-made solution or technical support. So without them, that they might go to other solutions or other chains. And the first one is, of course, more users and more partners are better, but it's not that easy for having that kind of ecosystem. So, but at least we have to provide some ways to attract people or attract ecosystem project. So with these requirements and implications, we have designed a blockchain ecosystem for Web2 games. Actually, this is a set of just components and blockchain, but this is a really essential part for games, especially Web2 games. So inside this blockchain platform, we have, of course, blockchain and SDK and library and wallet, chain explorer, DEX, NFT marketplace. These are really needed by Web2 games. And of course, this is a separate and independent ecosystem. They help to communicate with layer 1 chains or public exchanges and public marketplaces. So we also need bridges. So as a public blockchain and as an enterprise-grade blockchain, we have been working with many game companies, also metaverse services. So at the beginning of this year, we announced Klaytn 2.0, and its goal is to be the metaverse blockchain for all. And these are what Klaytn is providing for games and the metaverse services. So since, as I mentioned, the performance is the key, and so the Klaytn is providing 1 second block time with immediate finality because we are using PBFT consensus. Even though the Klaytn is the EVM compatible and Ethereum 100% compatible chain, but we are using different consensus and different the governance mechanism, so we can provide high performance. And again, they need an independent or their own system. So we provide layer 2 or the independent blockchain solution called the service chain. And apart from service chain, we provide packaging services and so on. And the next one is about fee delegation feature. This is kind of a very wonderful feature that Klaytn provides, but with this fee delegation feature, the providers and the game developers, they can pay for transaction fees on behalf of users. So users don't have to worry about their transaction fees or gas fees. The providers or game developers can do that instead of users. And next one is the gas price model. So we have been using fixed gas price model, but there were some issues regarding transaction bots and the network manipulation by those attacks and so on. So recently we are developing a dynamic and but deterministic gas price model, and that will be available soon. And lastly, so as I mentioned, the Klaytn is an EVM compatible chain. So we actually support 100% Ethereum compatibility, which means the Ethereum equivalence is supported in Klaytn. So these are the primary features about Klaytn, but this is about the gaming. So how Klaytn is supporting games is like this. So the core component of this initiative is open source software package that is called Metaverse package, and it contains the customized L2 solution and SDK and smart contract library, wallets, and chain explorer and so on. And these will be all open source, and some of them are ready, but we are still building, and this component and everything will be available within this year as an open source. So I want to emphasize again about performance and finality, because these are key requirements from the Web2 games. And we summarized the block generation time and the time to finality among different chains, and layer 1 chains, layer 2 chains, and from Solana to Hedera Hashgraph. And so again, these days the chains are high performing, and they are saying their block generation time is short, and they provide immediate finality or a short finality. But in reality, if we measure transaction latency with the real network, and then the numbers might be different from what you see from the website or documentation. We measure transaction latency. Transaction latency here means the time after we sending a transaction to the network and measure the completion of transaction, the real completion. Yeah, so which means the finalized the version of completion. So here, even though these blockchains say they have 0.4 seconds and 1 second, 2 seconds for the block generation, but again, the transaction latency it might be much larger than the block generation time, because they might need more confirmation or and so on. So, but Klaytn provides immediate finality, so the round trip time, the transaction latency was around 2 seconds. So, and with a small standard deviation. So this could satisfy the Web2 games and Web2 game developers. And the next part about the developed environments. Actually, even though we started from forking the Ethereum, we were moving, a different way or different direction. So we didn't follow the advancement EVM, but recently we realized that, the Ethereum's ecosystem and developed environment is grown fast, and it has many developers and many developers, and especially the smart contract developers are very familiar with Ethereum developer ecosystem. So supporting this kind of environment is very key for new users or new developers to just enter this industry. So we decided to support Ethereum compatibility again, and we made Klaytn 100% compatible with Ethereum. So that means the latest version of EVM and Ethereum transaction types and JSON RPC, those are supported on Klaytn. And with this interface, any tooling that can run on Ethereum can be used within the Klaytn ecosystem. And of course, since we are now compatible with Ethereum, so we'll also contribute the advancement of Ethereum and EVM. Okay, so with this, the basic features and performance, we built this kind of architecture. It's a hybrid architecture composing main chain and different service chain or layer 2 chains. And the service chain can be used for the game blockchain. And of course, these different chains can be connected through bridges, and the bridges are inherently implemented inside the service chain and the main chain. So the Klaytn has a 3-layer architecture, the consensus node network and the proxy node and endpoint node network. And these endpoint networks are the interfacing layer for users and different chains. So the service chain on the right side are communicating with the main chain through this endpoint layer. This is a kind of simplified version. But with this, the concept of hybrid architecture, we designed a 3-layer architecture for blockchain game platform. So we have a mainnet on the left side, and we have a hub chain, and that is issuing the game platform token. Also, the hub chain is used to trade game tokens and NFTs in the game ecosystem. And on the right side, there are game chains that are used for each chain, and each chain might have their own chain, or they might use hub chain and so on. So, and of course, there are also bridges between hub chain and game chains, and the game assets, FT and NFTs, can be transferred between these two chains. And of course, sometimes these hub chain and game chains are implemented as a private chain, and so they don't have a way to communicate with the public world. So they, in that case, they rely on the mainnet or layer 1 chain to communicate with central exchange or public NFT marketplaces. That's why we have a bridge between these two, and they communicate to layer 1 and then go to the public services. And so these are the architectures that we have designed, and with this architecture, we work with many game companies like Marvel and We Made and so on. So they built their own game ecosystem using our service chain, and these are some examples. But interestingly, there's also a game platform that was built on top of mainnet. So instead of just deploying different chain and building their own chain, they made a game platform by just utilizing the mainnet. And of course, these two kinds of game platforms are interacting through the Klaytn mainnet. And lastly, this is some games already deployed and already running on their own blockchain platform. So mostly they are based on Web2 IPs. So there were existing games, but there are also Web3 or P2E versions of these games. And these are all P2E games, and they have hundreds of thousands users and more. And you can find these from App Store or the website and so on. So these are really nice games, yeah. Okay, so let me conclude my talk. So P2 games, yeah, we know every crypto users are playing P2 games, but they are attracting users with some financial gains, but they don't keep the users for a long time because games are not fun to play for a long time. Yeah, so we are not playing game only for money. I mean, people are playing game to enjoy fun, right? So we have this problem, and to tackle this issue, the large Web2 or AAA companies, and they started looking into Web2 and the Web3 architecture and the P2E game structures, and they combine the fun of their own IP and the P2E structure with their resources and their IPs and development know-how. But you know, they have been running their games for a long time, 10 years or more than 20 years. And when they look at the blockchain and this Web3 infrastructure, everything is kind of, less performing if from the perspective game two companies, so Web2 companies. So their requirement for blockchain ecosystem is, they are not that simple, and they cannot be simply met. So the blockchain technology and software stack should be prepared to meet this requirement. And as an example, and as a public layer on blockchain, Klaytn has been working closely with these Web2 companies, Web2 game companies, to meet their requirements and to design architectures and the ecosystem for Web2 games. And a key component of this effort is our open source package for games and metaverse, and we believe that this kind of our experience and open source package that will be very helpful for both blockchain and game industries. Thank you for your attention, and if you need more information about Klaytn and what we are doing, and just scan this QR code, then you can find more information. Thank you. Any question? Okay, thank you. And I and my team will be around. So yeah, if you have question, just, yeah, reach us. Thank you.